Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Mark, this is Spiguyver Backpacking, and today I wanted to sit down and talk with you guys about one of my favorite stoves. It's a stove that I came up with. Yes, there were designs out there and there were people that were already making some similar, but I made some changes to it and came up with kind of my own take on it. And that is what became known as the Spiguyver stove. So this is originally what it was. This is a Starbucks espresso can, one of the small ones. It's the 6.5 ounce. And so it's two pieces. It's the outer piece and then an inner sleeve that has some crimps to it. And then they mate together. And this is a wickless stove. So you light it and it'll come to a bloom pretty quickly with the flames coming up the outside, and you set your pot directly on it. Now I stopped using this specific one, even though this one here, I've actually been using this one for several years. I stopped using it after a Eagle Rock Loop trip. We went on the Eagle Rock Loop trip, and I think it was a little bit of hypothermia, a little bit of the cold getting to me, but I knocked it over a couple of times while using it. And I kind of became a little bit aware that I could be causing some problems. Additionally, I've had a lot of people comment that theirs becomes brittle. And the thing is, if you burn this without a pot on top, this thin aluminum does become brittle over time and actually can completely deteriorate and melt and eat away. Mine has been going for years, and you can see it's not brittle at all. It still works just fine. I could go out and use this one today, absolutely no problem. But I took those concerns, so the fact that it's such a small diameter, and then the brittleness, I took those concerns and I came up with 2.0. So this is the Spiguyver stove version 2.0, and it is, instead of being made out of a soda can or an espresso can, it's made out of these aluminum beer bottles. And these things are a little bit thicker, a little bit higher gauge aluminum than what a soda can is made of. The soda cans are really flimsy. These have a lot more stability to them. Plus, it is a little bit wider. If you take a look at the diameter, it's a little bit wider. While it still works well with a 550 pot, it gives a little bit more stability so it isn't as tippy. Additionally, because it is that thicker gauge, you don't have to be quite as obsessed with keeping a pot on top as you do with the original. You can go ahead and take a pot off, pour your water off, set it back on there, and not worry about this aluminum getting brittle nearly as quickly as you do with the old style. So today what I wanted to do was show you how I made this one, and so that's what we're going to do. We're going to sit down, we're going to actually make another one, and I'll walk you through the steps. So let's do it. Okay, so let's talk about what you need in order to do this. So you're going to need one of these bottles. I had a hard time finding these. I ended up having to buy a case of 8 of these Michelob Ultra cans. I know that Budweiser makes some of their, like Bud Light and Budweiser ones in these as well. I had a hard time finding them. If you can find them, grab them. But they're a little bit thicker and they work really good for this. You're gonna need a knife in order to cut into the bottle. You're gonna need some sort of scissors or shears to cut the bottle. You're gonna need something to measure, something to mark with. I like a Sharpie. A thin piece of paper. So I've just got about an inch wide strip of paper and a little bit of tape. And so let's take a look at how we actually measure these things. So what I've got here is the two pieces. You can see they come apart real easy. They just fit down inside of each other. And the reason they fit inside of each other is because of these crimps that are on here. For this base, mine is just a little over. It's about 1 1/8 inches, between 1 1/8 inches and 1 1/4 inches tall. So we'll go with about 1 1/8 inches. You can go whatever. The higher you go here, the more capacity it's going to have, but the weight's going to go up as well. So I'm going to go about 1 1/8 inches on that. So there's different ways you can do it. You can find things to set down and set your pen on in order to come to the right height. And this is just slightly higher than what I've got here. So let's go ahead and use this. So I'm just using the Scotch tape, setting my marker on there, and then taking and just spinning this bottle to make that mark. Okay. I'm gonna do that all the way around. Make sure I've got that mark all the way around. Now you could also just take your ruler, put this where you want it on that ruler, and hold it there. And as long as you can be steady, you can then go ahead and spin the can and keep that line there. So now you can see I've made one line on there. Now what I want to do is actually have a second line that's about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch higher than that. And that's so that I have a nice clean line that I can use for the next piece of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take, let's see if I'm just going to take this, the inner sleeve that I had before, and I'm going to put this on there, and I'm just going to make another line. Yeah, it moved a little bit, so I'll just make sure I'm steady with it. But you do want a nice even line. So there, now you can see I've got 2 lines on there, and I'm gonna cut this can right between the 2 and then make the fine cuts between. So I'll put the cap back on my Sharpie, and I'm just gonna take my knife, get it started, okay? And then I'm just gonna use the knife primarily to get this rough cut till it's just at the point where it's hanging, and then snip it off. Now, in order to make the bottom part, what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to use my scissors, and you can just use regular scissors and just cut as close to perfectly on that line as I can. And now we have the base. So you can see I went just a little bit taller than the original base, but it's really close to being that. So if I was using this one exactly, I could use exactly the same height as this, but because I did change the base of this a little bit, I have to change what I went with this. So if I put this in here, I can measure that it comes up just about 3/4 of an inch. But if I go into my original one, I had it set so that it is about 15/16, so just shy of an inch. I'm really looking to be about an inch. So if I put this in here and I measure that it needs another 1/8 of an inch to be at an inch, I'll measure it, and it comes out at about just shy of 2 inches. So I will go 2 1/16, and that should work. So from this line, I want to mark 2 1/16, just so that I have a reference line there. Okay, reference mark is on there. Now I'm going to go ahead and trim up the bottom of this one as well, just like I did the base. I'm going to do it for the bottom of this piece. Now be careful while you're doing this that you don't have this extra piece that's hanging there come up and cut you. Alright, so I've got that cut. Now what I can do is actually find something that's about the right height. That's going to be a little too high, but because I know it was just a little bit higher, that actually works perfect, that I just use this with the width of the Sharpie on top. It hits right at that point. And so I'm going to secure this and just start spinning the can. And now I've got a line on that can that I can use. So above that line, probably about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch above that line, I'm going to get my knife in there. I'm going to kind of support the bottle a little bit as I'm cutting, just so I don't crease the piece that I'm going to be using. Again, get it to the point where it's just hanging. Cut it loose. Trap. Now I've got the ring that's going to be going inside, the insert. But I've got to trim it again down to that line that I put on here. Okay, so you can see here that the new sleeve that I built, the new insert, is a little bit taller than the one that I had used before. Just as the outside piece is a little bit taller. But you can't put this in yet. You have to get those creases on there. Now you want them pretty evenly spaced, kind of like I have here, so that you've got a nice even flame pattern around your stove. So how do we do that? Well, easiest way I've found is to cut a strip of paper like this, wrap it around. I don't want too much of an overlap, so I'm going to cut off some of the excess. I'm going to cut off some of the excess there, put it on here, and I'm going to get a little piece of tape, tape that together. Now I'm going to pull it off. Okay, so now I have a template here. What I'm going to do is fold it in half, or fold it so that it is flat, make sharp creases on there, and I'm going to do it again, folding it in half, again, sharp creases. Then, so that you don't have too much of a width issue on here, or a thickness issue, I'm going to open it up and take each outside edge and fold it right to the center and crease those as well. Now you can open it up and you have lines on there. So the best way to do this is to go ahead and put this back on. Now it's kind of a little bit of work since you creased it to get it back on there. Okay, so you get it on like this, and then what you want to do is line. I like to line one of the lines up with a line that's actually on the can, so that you have a nice vertical. Then I go around, and at each of the spots where there is a line, I put a mark on the top and on the bottom. Top, bottom, which become the jets, the burners. Okay, so those are all on there. Now, if you're gonna do more, you can save this by just sliding it off and keeping it. If this was your only one, you can rip it off of there if you had a hard time getting it on like I did. But the tighter it is, the more accurate your spots are gonna be. Now, this is where something with a sharp edge comes in. I sometimes will use the back of a knife. Not this one, because this one's not long enough, but if you have something with a sharp edge, you can put it there and use that to crease. Or I have this metal ruler, and this metal ruler has a nice straight edge, and so I will place it over, line it right over 2 dots, and then I will pull up like this to create a 90-degree angle, and that gives you your crease. So you can see right now you've got one crease in there. So I just go around and I go to the next one, line up your 2 dots. So I'm just going to do this all the way around. It doesn't take a long time, and if you're off a little bit, it's not a huge deal, but I do like to keep mine pretty even as you go around. Now I've got a couple here that definitely need a little bit of attention, so let me do a couple of these again. All right, now you can put it in and you've got yourself a stove. Let's measure that. Just a hair shy of 1 inch above, and just in a few minutes you've made yourself a really good performing stove. I think that one's a little too deep, so I'm going to actually pull it out a little bit. And that's the great thing, is you can sit there and you can adjust it. Okay, you put it in, you find one, you can kind of flatten it out and get it so that they're all pretty even and pretty uniform, and that's what you end up with. So real easy to make. Let's see what they look like in action. Okay, I wanted to show just how quickly this will come to a bloom. So I'm going to grab it, kind of tilt it so that I can get my lighter in there. Lights really quickly, and then with a matter of seconds we have a nice bloom and a very nice flame pattern. All right guys, so there you have it. That is the Spiguyver stove. So the original version weighed in at 5.6 grams. The new one weighs in at 11.2, but it is definitely a more robust, even in your hand. I mean, as I squeeze this one, it definitely flexes, whereas this one's got a lot more rigidity to it, a lot more stability there. The wider base does make it a more stable thing, so I will use this a little bit more out on the trail. I really think this is going to be what I'm using for 2020 when we're able to get back out on the trail. Anywhere that I can use an alcohol stove, I do use an alcohol stove. When I can't use one, I'll switch it up, but for me, for right now, this is the stove that I'll be using, and this is the improved version of it, and now you can make yourself one. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, leave comments down below. Let me know what you're using for a stove. Leave it down below in the comments. I'll see you guys down the trail.